All right, so today I thought we would go over something that I see that's looked at all the time on YouTube and is asked for, and I'm going to do my take on fat wood. What is it? Where do you find it? How do you process it? How do you use it to start a fire? Okay, so fat wood 101. Fat wood comes from pine trees and evergreen trees. Where I live, we have a couple different species of pine. As you can see, it's got a very distinguishable bark, so you know what that bark looks like. That helps you to understand that that's pine. And there's needles. Pine are one of the only species of coniferous tree. In other words, they don't lose their leaves in this part of the US. So number one is understanding your surroundings and knowing that I'm in a pine forest right now, which tells me that there is fat wood. So we're going to go on a little nature walk and see through my eyes what I look for when I find pine trees. So what I'm looking for are fallen pine that are thick. I can tell that this is a pine tree because there's that same pine bark. Pine does not season well, which means that once it falls, it usually rots quickly. However, if you come across some pine that's not rotting very quickly, the chances are it is full of fat wood. But I happen to know where there's a pretty good stash. So I'm going to take you to a really good example, and you could see that I've already processed some of this. I already knew where this was. But this is another great example. You can see the bark right here. That is pine bark. Nothing else looks like it in this area. You can see that there's pine needles here. So at least you have given a positive ID of the tree. The next thing is test. If you whack it, is it rotten or is it hard? If it's hard, the chances are that it's fat wood. Now you might have good fat wood and you might not. It really depends. So what we're going to do is we're going to saw into this. I'm going to process it, and then I'll show you how to process it and light a fire with it. Stay tuned. All right, so after just a few minutes, I just took my axe and up against this old cedar, I split this up. So as you can tell, this is what it looks like. And what's really nice about getting it from a stump is that it creates these nice long pieces, which are really great for feather sticks, shavings, and the scrapings. Well, I tell you, this filming thing is harder than any of these skills that I'm teaching. All right, so we've got our fat wood here. Easy to tell by this red coloring and the smell. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that into smaller pieces. Right? You know that you're in fat wood heaven when you can use a fat wood baton. And fat wood is still really soft, so it's easy to baton, but it is something that you want to keep an eye on if you use a lot of it, because if you're using the back of your knife, as I'm going to be here, to make these shavings, that pine will get all over your stuff. All right, so we've batoned it, and now what we're going to do is we're going to use the back of our knife, and we're going to create some scrapings. All right, now I don't use a whole lot of those, because what I will then do is I will make some curls, and you don't need very many. Just like you would for a feather stick. So you have this and you have this. All right, so I've got my scrapings from the back of my knife, which I will clean as soon as I get home. And then I've got these feathers, and then I split these little pieces into kindling. Now, if it's wet, I like to put these pieces into my fire just as extra assurance. It's a ton of accelerant to use, but you can get larger pieces going. So let me go ahead and demonstrate. Here I have some kindling, I've got some pine, and I've got some pieces that are a little bit larger. Now, this is not a good kindling pile. This is a terrible kindling pile, but I did that for a reason. Kindling with typical fuel sources, you need to have twice as much as you think you need. I like to get 2 big handfuls and cross them over together in the necks, and then I get my thumb-sized pieces. Again, I'm going to use a smaller fire here because this is just for demonstration, and I only have a small amount of water to put it out, so I want to be responsible. And 2, I wanted to demonstrate the effectiveness of this natural source of fire starter, because you don't need fuel that's perfect. So we're going to go ahead and get this started. I'm going to remove this, and I like to scrape this on a rock. And what I'll do, again, this is not very much, but it doesn't need to be very much. So you can see 1 strike, and you're going to get this going. And I'm just going to transfer that. All right. And then we can just kind of do this if you want to. It's not actually necessary unless things are really, really wet. And the great thing about fat wood is that's going to go and that's going to stay going. So unlike flash tinders, things like you know, if you're using cedar bark or dry grass or something like that, where you need to immediately put something on that to get it going because you don't want it to go out. You can see I'm sitting here and just talking to you, wasting time, and it's still working. So now we're going to put this marginal material on here, and by marginal, it is a little bit dry, it is a little bit wet, and it's not necessarily the type of thickness that you would want to go for. And because this fire pit has been dug out by some type of animal, I must have left a little food here last time. There's tons of airflow underneath. And you can see just how well that gets going. So I hope you like this. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. I will try to improve the production quality of this. The tripod that I used was actually one that I made out of wood and lashed together, and I didn't have anything to really hold it up there. So hope that this was informative and educational, and yeah, like and subscribe.